Good evening. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh and welcome to Mzansi Welcomes the World. My name is Faraz Patel. We'd like to thank you, the viewer, for staying with us here on Hilaal TV, DSTV channel 347. Yes, we are 9 days away from that Leaders Summit that will be happening in Nasrec, Johannesburg. Well, as the leaders gather for that summit, the focus will be primarily on economics, geopolitics, climate change, but it's also about data, evidence, and the question with regards to economic justice. Understanding global policies affect inequality, growth, and accountability. And this requires more than just political will. It requires data-driven insight and statistical integrity. And joining me now to have this discussion, I'd like to welcome the former Statistician-General of our country, and he also co-chaired Paris 21. It's none other than Dr. Pali Lehohla. Dr. Lehohla, absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for the invitation on this historic moment.
No, absolute pleasure having you on. Dr. Lehohla, from what we've seen in this sort of 11 months of the G20 presidency of South Africa, but even prior to that, is data governance something that is of concern or a priority within the G20 nations?
Let me put it this way. I haven't seen national statistics officials participating in this, not from any country, not from South Africa particularly. And when the SDGs were conceived, there was a question as to what are these indicators that, or goals that world leaders are agreeing on. And in fact, it was questioned by us as statisticians when there was MDGs, Millennium Development Goals, because we are given indicators and then we are said, this were thrown over the wall and said measure. And the key problem is that the architecture of measurement has to be designed from how you define a goal.
Right.
There was a serious improvement when the SDGs were organized, and I was part of the particularly Agenda 2063, the indicators of goals of Agenda 2063. I was leading that process in terms of defining the indicators, and I was participating at the world stage at the level of SDGs. What is missing in this G20 are the statisticians. And we are back to the MDG period where statisticians were missing, but a correction was made in the SDGs. Now, G20 doesn't have statisticians. So there is a problem, I'm sure. Well, people talk about data insights. To organize data, you have to aggregate it into statistics so that you can see time series. Statistics generate time series. Data doesn't have necessarily time series because it's something that is woolly that comes at you, whereas when you process it and into statistics, then you generate time series. That then makes data valuable. So at the moment, I think it's more fashionable to talk about data in the easy way without talking about
But there's no hard questions to it. There's no, you mentioned it, it's a priority. But like you say, there's no real data working group or stats working group within the country to say,
well, within the G20.
Yeah, within the G20, I beg your pardon, yes.
And the problem, and the fundamental problem is this, that therefore there is nothing that unifies at an intrinsic and organic level what is being discussed. Because data is the mechanism by which you construct the reality as it exists and as you wish to see it. And that's where statistics becomes very, very, very important. But I see serious paucity. There's no what you call statistics or S20, which is basically the statisticians sitting down and saying, what is this G20?
You know what's interesting? One of your successors, Risenga Maluleki from Stats SA, there was a supposed questionnaire on job seekers or active job seekers to try and now bring it home to try and understand the actual supposed unemployment rate of our country. And I felt that was quite an important piece of data. Now, it's something like that where if data could be shared across the world, it would actually tell a much clearer and more authentic story of inequality.
Are you talking about Fori?
Yes,
No. Fori, I have on several occasions said this man has aggregated blacks and made them currency and traded in them. To have questioned Statistics South Africa on the unemployment numbers is absolutely, let me use very, very strong language, rubbish.
So you don't agree with that?
Fori is wrong. Unfortunately, you are supported by Minister Tawi and Minister Meth, who said, yes, let's improve measurement. People who actually have to be fair with the measurement, the history of measurement. The Statistician-General is 100% correct in the way he measures. In fact, in the last labor force survey, he has added a lot of descriptors to that formulation. But it doesn't change the level of the unemployed. For it to come in begs the question, which is this. And that question is a parallel of what we are talking about now. What does corporate South Africa discuss when they discuss, particularly white corporates? If Fori, a man of success, can say South Africa has 10% unemployment, and no single corporate, no single politician puts him on the carpet to ask him, then the question is, what do corporates discuss? So the same question can be asked. When statistics is not around the table, what does G20 discuss?
And then it comes to Paris 21, Dr. Lehohla, because you co-chaired this. And this was really getting to the nitty-gritties of global statistics. Should the G20 be looking at Paris 21 and saying, let's try and use this to actually get a clearer picture? Because let's call it for what it is. The global north is really going to be affected because those are developed nations. They would look at their GDPs and say, we're satisfied with what we are. Let the global south figure it for themselves. Is that something, especially South Africa in its presidency as a global south nation, should be looking at and saying, let's try and have this so that we can get a true, authentic way of statistics, especially when it comes to inequality?
I'll talk about Paris 21. I'll talk about multidimensional poverty indices. I'll also talk about the decadal development decades. 1960, 1970, 1980, 1990, the MDGs, the SDGs. You look at the 1960s, there had to be a commitment of a 0.09 GNI by developed nations to that was never provided. The MDGs said partner for all indicators. And when it came to the partnership, goal 8 of the MDGs, we were at the United Nations Statistics Commission, and the North almost wholesale voted against the group of 77 and China. I was in that. They voted against it. They wouldn't accept an all goals. So we are sitting here with G20. I'm sure there will be contestation around that. So going back to Paris 21, we established this Paris 21 in 2000 under Claire Short, who was a British MP, who was saying, well, we are talking about this goal, we are talking about this development, but we don't have a system of measurement, particularly in Africa. We didn't have a system of continuous measurement, such as censuses and so on. So I co-chaired Paris 21. And in that co-chairing of Paris 21, it was very clear that the Global South, particularly Africa, had no reasonable appetite. And of course, the UNECA, United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, in 2005, I was with my sister, Gladys Grace Bediako, who is the chief statistician of Ghana. And the UNECA said we don't have a plan for censuses. I was insane. And then we met in Yaoundé, where we actually discussed this thing and said, we are declaring independence to this. It was at the end of the meeting when I sat down, I said, ask my colleagues, after we had plotted and said, this is a resolution that we are adopting. I said, yes, we can adopt this resolution, but who is the UNECA? I asked that question 3 times. We said, we are UNECA. I said, guys, if we say so, you are giving me a mandate to go and talk to Trevor Manuel in South Africa.
Was then the finance minister, yes.
Yes, so that we can actually put UNECA on the horse to do the work it does. That started what we called Africa Symposium for Statistical Development, which I chaired for the 10 years.
Yes.
And we ran censuses, we ran a number of programs that were statistical in Africa that helped us to lift the bar. Unfortunately, we lack the stamina. At times we get infiltrated by things like called ID for Africa. ID for Africa, there's no ID for America, there's no ID for Europe, there's no ID for Asia, only ID for Africa, which is led by non-Africans. This particular issue, I mean, these people summited here in South Africa, and I called Minister Mzansi. I said, how do you host these people? So we get undermined.
And that's why I want to stop you, Prof, because I want to keep that word fresh in the memory of our viewers, undermining. Because after the break, we want to ask the question, is there going to be an undermining of the global South within statistics, but most importantly, addressing that elephant in the room, inequality? My conversation with Dr. Pali Lehohla continues after this break. Welcome back to Mzansi Welcomes the World. I'm still in conversation with Dr. Pali Lehohla, who is South Africa's former Statistician-General and the co-chair of Paris 21. Dr. Lehohla, we ended off with trying to keep the viewers with one word, myself and you included, undermining. Now, when this G20 happens, we've seen undermining already happening from Washington. The United States, clear they don't want to come to South Africa for various political reasons, number one. But will the rest of the global north that are within the G20 going to actually not just make commitments, but have actionable plans? Because it's great for the European countries to say, we're going to give a commitment to the global south on a lot of aspects, but actionable plans, especially on inequality. And can data be that driving force with regards to it?
You know, if you look at goal 16 and goal 17 or is it 17 or 18 on partnerships and one on climate, what did they do, these guys? Germany told us that we shouldn't use coal. So did Britain. They gave South Africa $8.5 billion, which has not been accounted for.
That's for the Just Transition Project.
For the Just Transition Project.
Yeah.
But they went back to coal. Is that not undermining? And stupid South Africa, trying to be a poster boy for the world, went for this and destroyed ESCOM. And they haven't accounted for why they closed Komati. Because Komati was producing 1,250 megawatts. I want to talk about undermining here in South Africa. The government has not accounted for what Matsila Koko and Molefe were doing to have an EAF of 75. What the writer did to destroy ESCOM and came to an EAF that was lower than 50%. And what Marokana and Mteto have done, Mteto going to get Kumaro, all black excellence. Instead, what the business South Africa is doing, which is dominantly white, wants to claim what Mteto and Marokana are doing, which is not different from what Molefe and the Koko did. So this undermining is so intrinsic, and it connects to Europe. So, coming to the undermining at G20, it starts with the commitments to the SDGs, which they have abandoned even during COVID. At the slightest trouble, they ran for the mountains. So it will continue to be that way. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have detent. I'm not saying we shouldn't have conversations. But surely, South Africa has shown weakness of a fundamental nature to say that they want to destroy their coal-fired power stations against all signs that shows that emissions can be captured. A coal-fired power stations in Canada doesn't produce any emissions from coal. The question that South Africans must ask and not be so docile is, why should you wheel solar from Northern Cape at the price of 400 billion when you have energy across when you have the sun across South Africa. That cost doesn't make sense.
Doctor, here's my thing. So you're mentioning emissions, and of course South Africa trying to keep the emissions to the global standard. So my understanding is coal-fired power stations will not, and I know we're drifting off this, but I just want to get this point so that the viewer can understand this. You're saying that coal-fired power stations don't really produce the emissions which go against global standards.
No. Technology is available
Yeah.
to capture emissions.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. I'm saying invest in capturing the emissions.
Which is data, of course.
And of course, what the president of Barbados, Maya, said was, the enemy is not coal. The enemy is emissions. So defining the problem accurately and appropriately gives you the solution that is required. But these summits like this ones obfuscate and do all kinds of things so that the weak, the meek, and the unintelligent fall for the Trojan horse, which South Africa has fallen for. So undermining started there with De Ruyter. He was hardly ever at ESCOM. He was dealing with how the 8.5 billion could come. Nobody has accounted for that, and that's undermining. G20, is it going to correct that? You know, the fanfare that South Africa went to G something, I can't even...
G7, yeah.
No, the other thing of climate.
Right. Oh, COP. Yeah, COP 30 is currently happening in Brazil, yeah.
I don't know whether anybody from South Africa is there.
Well, not that I know of, yeah.
Meaning, after making that kind of noise. So the problem with us is dance and song instead of actually dealing with the substance of development, which is anchored in data. So for that reason, we'll always be undermined.
Dr. Lehohla, I want to bring in, you mentioned SDG, Sustainable Development Goals. I had Isabel Fryer yesterday from Oxfam, and she was touching on the Tax the Super Rich campaign. So what they're looking for is they would like the recommendations from whatever is discussed in the G20 so that the wealthy, and I'm talking about billionaires and the trillionaires, to be taxed 1 or 2% to counter the inequality that the world is currently going through. My question to you is, through data, through whatever analysis can be given there, number one, can this be addressed? And number two, would there be a consensus from those who have the wealth to actually say, we're willing to address this for the inequality? Bear in mind that many of these rich are capitalists by nature, and you can't take that away from them.
The statement from South Africa, the most important statement, is captured there that poverty or inequality is not natural.
Yes.
I think that statement is very, very profound.
Right.
But probably it can only it may just end at saying it's not natural, because it's never been natural. Yet we have seen inequality increasing. What Fred was saying, it's possible you can tax. But I think we need to go back to the classics, because where we are with information technology and like, and chapter 15 of Karl Marx, volume 1, 150 pages, I tell you, discusses the autonomous systems, which is basically AI.
Right.
And says, with AI you have captured the difficulties, the dialectics of nature.
Sure.
And human beings must be looking at peace. Yet we see super accumulation in 2 areas by 10 men who own $1.7 trillion of the world.
Yeah.
And those are in fashion goods, exclusive goods, and information technology. And information technology is where Marx discusses the issue of the productive forces, the development of productive forces, to the point where autonomous systems will be available for humankind to actually exploit and explore.
And that's where data comes in.
That's where data comes in. And
Yes.
here we don't have G20 or Statistics 20, which is crucial for the discussion looking ahead to fight inequality, not only from the evidence of the data, but from the ability of autonomous systems to deal with the challenges of nature and the foresight to deal with the challenges of nature, so that human beings can actually concentrate on peaceful coexistence.
You speak of peaceful coexistence. it's a question I ask many of the guests that I've had on the show so far, Dr. Lehohla. South Africa's legacy. So from a political perspective, South Africa has called itself this honest broker, whether it's, brokering the Ukraine-Russia ceasefire. We've seen, of course, the ICJ case, the Gaza genocide. But South Africa's legacy in terms of data, in terms of addressing this inequality. We see on the screen now Professor Stiglitz' report. You've obviously had a look at it. You've gone deep into it. And President Ramaphosa has given the commitment, and this is just words, to say we want to deal with inequality. How much does the legacy of South Africa's G20 presidency hang on South Africa really taking not just the lead, but that extra step in addressing it?
This issue of South Africa and Eskom is too telling. That there were two black guys who dealt with load shedding in South Africa up to 2017. They brought a white man, and that white man was supported by Oberholzer, who now is called Umlilo, and he's dealing with the solar panels. If it was a black person, they would have cried corruption. Now, after that, they bring another two black guys. And one black guy goes to Khumalo and says, Khumalo, I understand that during Matsila Koko and Molefe, you actually were working at Eskom, you fixed it. Khumalo says, I don't want Eskom. This period of derate has destroyed my thinking. Therefore, praise him, and says, please come back. He comes back. These two periods produce EAF of 75%. Now lies come out from Business South Africa that they fixed Eskom. How did they? They come with 350 million rands. 350 million rands. Matlala eats it in one day. Ted Matlala, that 350 million. Now you say you fix Eskom. So these lies are terrible, and government allows them. The trajectory under the Rata was that one functioning power station was working. The question is, the same people cannot trust their commitment when they cannot confront the demons that they caused us. They did. Nobody's answering. It looks like the Rata appointed himself. And then the Rata resigned by himself.
So my understanding, Dr. Lehohla, and we've got about a minute left, there isn't really going to be anything tangible from South Africa's presidency.
Unless and until we face our demons, I don't think we can make any commitment to the world, particularly when you put business at the center of policy and you drive projects as your development model. You actually have to drive policy as your development model and then invite projects on the basis of what the policy in terms of targets suggests. At the moment, the government has brought private sector right at the heart. And that's why they can claim victory for fixing Eskom, which is a lie.
Dr. Lehohla, unfortunately, the time has come to an end.
Thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for joining us. That's Dr. Pali Lehohla, former Statistician-General of South Africa, and of course the former co-chair of Paris 21. After the break, I'm going to be speaking to Matshidiso Lenkwasa. We're going to be discussing or keeping the topic on inequality, and can there be an addressing of the economic challenges, especially within the global south, with the G20 Leaders Summit coming up. Do stay tuned. We'll be back after this break.